Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I hope. My
Hi,
God, I hope. I hope.
please. We pray. Thank you for your patience. It is appreciated. Let us hope it does not happen again.
Let's hope.
And we're back.
Oh, wait, no, no, no. Hang on. Let me get the. There you go. There you go. Much easier for y'all to read in single page view.
There you go.
There we go. All right.
About the fellowship.
About the fellowship. So, the safe havens are the places where I don't know why. If this thing cuts out again, folks, I am sorry. I'm process of elimination. It doesn't happen on Tuesdays. It doesn't happen when I'm streaming on my own personal channel. For whatever reason, it keeps happening on Wednesday night, and I cannot figure out why.
It's just an amaze.
Like, I don't get it. I don't understand, folks. So please bear with me. We are continuing to try and do this. I have one other theory, but that's a whole conversation that we can't have here. So your safe haven is just that. It is your starting location where you're going to return to. In the case of Lord of the Rings, it's don't you dare. Um, uh, I'm talking at the stream, friends, not you. It's that whole like
I was like,
um
am I showing the
no. It is it's where you start and where you go and what you do when then where you return to. We're gonna get past that to see how much more we can get.
how much
Fellowship,
more we can talk about?
yeah. The fellowship is very much a how do I put this? Your fellowship rating is it determines the bond that you have with one another. It determines how much. I don't want to use camaraderie because that doesn't really.
Trust?
Nah, it's more than that. It is the bond that you develop with your fellow player characters. And so the more you adventure together, the stronger that bond gets. When the stronger the bond gets, the more you are able to actually do stuff. Um, and you gain additional bonuses during fellowship mode, right? So while you're adventuring, you build your fellowship. Then when you go into the fellowship phase, it works as like a cache almost of points and experience and stuff like that that you can thus in turn transfer over to your character sheet to gain abilities or to increase stats or a handful of other mechanical benefits. But the core point of it is that the fellowship builds as you encounter things, as you fight things, as you handle tough situations outside and in, right? And that's kind of what the fellowship does. The fellowship is also where a lot of the interesting mechanics come into play. I'm gonna stop talking at this point because the fellowship is a really neat thing where a lot of stuff comes into play, and I really want to get into that. But we're gonna have Rachel talk about combat because she is very, very interested
Yes.
in how the combat system really
I
works.
really like it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's so there are, I think, four phases officially, venturing phases. There is combat, there is councils, there are journeys, and then there is fellowship. Um, the Just a quick rundown of what councils and journeys are. Councils are used for like very important social encounters. It encourages like each adventure to have like one or two, and it's required to be like an official, formal gathering where decisions must be made. uh, there is a couple of different, what's the word I'm looking for? Parts to it. There is the you're normally the most charismatic individual will present the request,
Mm-hmm.
make some sort of roll to see what the resistance rating will be. Then we move on to the introduction. Uh, which then leads to the interactions, and depending on how well the introduction goes, determines the resistance rating and how many skill checks within the skill challenge of interactions must succeed in order for the individuals, the groups, to get what they want. I hope that made sense.
Yes.
Yay! Okay.
But it makes sense to me. Like,
that's fair. If it doesn't make sense to you guys, put it in the chat. I'll re-explain it. But for journeys, it is basically a series of skill checks to determine how quickly you can get to the destination, if anything happens on the road, and to see if anyone gets fatigue. Someone must be a guide, and then that's kind of determined by a certain skill, which is, I think it's travel. I think it's the travel skill. Then there's like others, such as like hunting, or a hunter who skill is hunting, lookout, which is awareness, and scout, which is explore. And I'm sure that there are several others. But then for combat, to me, it feels very cinematic in the way that it is explained, and the way that you can like go about it, because the first part is setting a stance, which is something that D&D does not have. So this is all very new to me, which there are 4 stances. There is forward, which gives you an extra d6 to attacks, but the enemies against you also get an extra d6. You get access to a skill called intimidation, which uses awe, which is one of the strength skills. You have open, which allows someone to enhearten. There's no d6 addition or penalty. You're just able to rally your troops, your friends. Then there's defensive, which gives a minus d6 to attack rolls that are given and received, and they also can protect a companion, which is very fun. And then there is rear ward, which is using ranged attacks only. You can only be attacked by ranged attacks, and you can only attack with ranged attacks, and you're able to prepare a shot. And how this goes down is that within combat, you choose this stance, you set the enemies to those players, and then you all take your actions, which there are main actions and there are secondary actions. Main actions are like attacking. Secondary actions are, we haven't gotten into this, but there's a thing called endurance and load. And depending on if your load matches your endurance, you will get a condition called weary, which is bad. You don't want to be weary. And in order to lighten your load, you can cast off armor or shields or anything. And you can do that as a secondary action, and that could save your life. So it's a lot of fun, different stuff. But the whole point is that once everyone sets their stances and the enemies are set and the actions go, the players go first, then the enemies go. And it's just fun to me. I don't know how else to explain it. I just really like the idea of it. Everyone is trying to hit the enemy's parry rating, which is their wits plus whatever shields that they might have. And what's fun about this is that armor doesn't actually help or add to your parry score, but it will help against special damages, which are rolled whenever someone gets a 6 on one of their d6s. There are a bunch of different special damages, which could be like slashing or bludgeoning or other like special specific stuff. And while it can be a bit rigid, I feel like if you're with the right group of people, it can be very flavorful as all of the players go at once. So you can kind of like interact and mix and match, and it's cool and it's fun. And I believe that that's all about combat. So
just to kind of piggyback off of what Rachel
said,
how combat ultimately works in the, the giant broad sense is the reason why you're going against parry skills and everybody kind of goes at once, so to speak, is because each round of combat is everybody declares their attacks, their stances, their whatever, right? And then your game master, your lore master in this case, because that's what they call them, and this is lore masters, sets the enemies for that, right? Everybody goes. The whole thing is you're attempting to wear down your opponent, hence by making them tired or weary or exhausted. And that is when you're finally able to do damage. Unless, like Rachel was saying, you get 6s on stuff, which automatically does special damage. That's how you have the one-shot kills with the arrow and the sword landed right where it needed to be able to end the orc's life or what have you, right?
The heroic moments.
The heroic moments, yes. But before that, everything else is to where even if your attack doesn't kill them, it affects them because I don't know how many of y'all been in a fight or not, but every hit you take, whether it hurts or not, wears you down. You're expelling physical energy. And that's what that's kind of meant to mimic, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
I think that was very well said. Fellowships?
Fellowships. Okay, so your fellowships, right? Once your fellowships are they're so neat how fellowships work. A group of heroes is more than just a band of roving mercenaries brought together by mere necessity. At its foundation are communal goals and mutual respect. The feeling of trust is recreated in the game by the company's fellowship score. Expressed by numerical value, fellowship is a pool of points shared among all player heroes that are mainly spent to recover lost confidence. Remember where Rachel was talking about confidence, right? Your willingness to fight, your willingness to continue on. Additionally, fellowship can be spent to trigger special effects tied to the company's patron, right? One of the ones, using Balin as an example, right? Endurance was one of his special abilities that they can trigger, right? Which endures them. It gives them longevity to be able to do things. Once calculated, the company's fellowship score is recorded by all players in their character sheets and in the designated space. For every point of fellowship spent, all player heroes must adjust the amount on their character sheet. So it is just that, a pool. You don't go, we've got 20 points, each of us get 5 if you have a group of 4 as an example, right? That's not how it works. It all comes down to a pool. So everybody can use as much or as little as needed, but once it's gone, and you have to recoup those points. Since fellowship is a common pool of points shared by all players, any expenditure must be agreed upon by all of them. This is kind of the part where combat can drag out slightly, right? But not necessarily in a bad way, because you are pulling from a group resource and you really have to think about it. So it's one of those, use it when you need to, but don't go overboard with it unless you know what I'm saying? The group has to agree on that, because those fellowship points may be needed elsewhere. You want to know what happens when you run out of fellowship points? A Belrog gets a whip around your ankle and pulls you down into the abyss. Just saying.
Also, for some reason, you're not centered in your frame, apparently.
I'm not?
You're not.
How about now? Now?
I think it was the original now was better.
Oh, yeah. No, sorry. I moved my chair over for a minute. I apologize.
There you go.
That better?
Something that I do really like about the fellowship phase is that it can be however long you guys want it to be. I think it said that it was like a minimum of 1 week, but it can be
the fellowship,
however long you need.
So the fellowship phase, one thing about it is your adventuring phase is just that, your adventuring phase. It's over the hill and through the woods to grandmother's house we slay, right? That is your adventuring phase. When your adventuring phase is done, when you've completed said task, right? The way that it's worked mechanically is your adventuring phase is on average going to be 3 to 4 sessions, right? That's your adventuring phase. Then you have a session that is your fellowship phase, right? Where you are resting at a place that is safe, where you are, it doesn't mean that you've gone and completed the entirety of the adventure and then come back, right? To break it down in a cinematic aspect, right? The first adventure phase would be the hobbits getting to Rivendell. When they're at Rivendell, that would be a fellowship phase. That is a time of rest and recuperation and recovery, right? Then the next portion of the adventure phase, right, would be them getting through the mines of Moria, right? And then on the outside of the mines of Moria and making their way to Glorfindel and whatnot, right? And to the White Lady, right? That would be another point of rest, a fellowship period, right? Where they take advantage of those things to rest, recover any damage that they've taken, right? To re-strengthen those bonds. But the big thing is about it the fellowship phase that is most important, in my opinion, is because, yes, as Rachel stated, it can be a week, it can be a month, it can be a year if you need it to be, depending upon, right? The fellowship phase is also where you determine if your character continues on. That's the key thing, right? So, like in The Hobbit, and in The Hobbit and in The Lord of the Rings and various stories throughout the Silmarillion and whatnot, right? Characters are with them to a point, right? And then they either stay, break away, or fade into the background, right? With that, you have my personal thing right here, my favorite rules. Creating the heir. Right? This is one of the coolest mechanics I've ever seen. You don't want to play your character anymore, or your character has progressed as much as they can, right? The player's heir is ready to continue the player's legacy upon reaching 10 previous experience points. When you get to 10 experience points, you're capped out. You can continue to play, or you can create an heir, right? That heir doesn't necessarily mean a child, like of your own creation, right?
Yeah.
But it could be a cousin. It could be a nephew, right? It could be something of that particular nature, right? That is, so in the case of, when you're looking at that, so in the case of the ring bearer, right? Frodo was Bilbo's nephew, right? But Frodo was his heir, right? He was the heir to Bilbo's estate and everything all the responsibilities that he had, right? That's how the heir system works in this one, is you create the next character to keep playing, right? And it allows you to essentially create your own lineage, right?
So cool.
Gandalf sitting there talking to Bilbo about who his great aunt was and who his great uncle was and who this family member was and that family member was and whatnot, showing the heir, what he was heir to, right? Then you look at like Gimli, because we all love fucking Gimli, right? Who was, who was a son of one of the original 13 company, right? Who was cousin to Balin, and Balin cousin to Durin himself, and stuff like that, right? Or to Durin the third, who took over Erebor, and like, you create these lineages that are able to do things that not only mark the passage of time, but it also shows that family lines and whatnot can have impact on the world itself, right? I think it's very cool, right? Because what is it? The blood of Isildur, right? Ended up in Aragorn. And it's that whole, if, an heir of yours, one of your previous characters falls to the shadow, right? Does something truly bad, breaks the fellowship, what have you, right? But you still need an heir for that character, right? For you to play. And now you have a new interesting aspect that you can play, right? Much like Aragorn, right? That same weakness flows through my veins, right? Thorin Oakenshield had the same weakness, as, his grandfather, the gold sickness or whatever you want to call it or whatnot, right? That kind of stuff, those weaknesses can get passed down. And so it's a neat, interesting way of continuing on playing in a campaign, but you don't necessarily always play the same character. I find that absolutely fascinating.
That's so cool. And it works so well because in a lot of, I'm going to use D&D as an example. In a lot of games, you're playing that character until they either die or you complete the story. And this is such like a natural progression for characters to just kind of fade in and out. And I love that. That's so freaking cool.
I'm just going through, friends, so you guys can see some of this amazing interior art that they have in here.
It's gorgeous.
Just some like these, right? Like, who knows, valor and wisdom.
I think the last thing I'm going to mention about the fellowship phase, one of the undertakings is that you can also just write a song.
Yes.
And I love that so much. And they have like different types of songs, which one of them could be a lay, which is to reference councils. And it says a player hero creates a short narrative poem, particularly appropriate to narrative heroic deeds and meant to be recited or sung at gatherings. There are songs of victory for combat feats, and there are walking songs for journeys.
Yep.
And I just, everything about this that I've read is just, it feels so magical, but not like,
One thing about the fellowship, because yes, the fellowship is a bit action, the journey, the adventuring system is very straightforward into what you're used to, right? Figure out the plan, execute the plan, the plan goes to shit, throw the plan out the window, and you keep going, right?
Yep.
But the fellowship portion of the game is it takes what many people are familiar with, like downtime, right? And the concept of downtime, and it gives it real meaning. It gives it real purpose. The drafting a song, right? Like something along those lines. But like, here I pulled up the actual how fellowship phase works, right? 1, set a duration. 2, choose a destination. 3, perform updates. 4, choose undertakings. 1, the duration. It says that when in fellowship mode, it should be at a minimum a week, right? One thing that to put it in perspective, people are like, a week, that's a long time. Well, I think, what was it? Like, the actual complete journey of the ring bearer of Frodo was something like a year and a half, something like that. It was like 19 months. Like, it wasn't like something they did over the span of a couple of months. Like, it took a while for them to be able to complete this kind of stuff, right? Did they sit there and watch them? Did we sit there and read and watch about them walking for, that long? No, we skipped around. But that's part of the thing that was very interesting about it, right? And the fellowship helps us convey that. Choose a destination as simply as where you're going to go and what you're going to do. Perform the updates. This is when you spend your skill points, right? Prime example, Boromir teaching the hobbits how to use swords, right? During the fellowship is when they would spend those points to reflect the training that they've been receiving. And fellowship is not meant to be we're taking a long rest, so let's make this happen, right? No, it's a dedicated amount of time which I find amazing. Another one that also is your... I love that they call this growth. They call it growth. They don't call it experience. They don't call it that. They call it growth. Players spend adventure points to buy new ranks in either wisdom or valor to enhance the adventurer's combat proficiency. As with skill points, players do not have to spend all their adventure points at once, but can save them to acquire more expensive upgrades later, right? But this is a prime example, right, of like just the things that you can do, the stuff that you can really make the most out of that downtime. Right here. I love that this is in here. Part of the Fellowship. Yule. Approximately once every 3 Fellowship phases, winter comes, and with it the end of the current year. Normally, companies spend the entire cold season as a single prolonged Fellowship. Life in the wild is unforgiving, and adventurers prefer to have a roof over their heads when the wind is howling and the land is buried in snow. In most cases, the company disbands temporarily on occasions of Yule festivities. That's right, friends. They celebrate Christmas.
Yay! This is why we did it right before Christmas, by the way. This is exactly why the LMA is here.
As each player hero takes the chance to return home and enjoy some time among family and folk. 3 months are enough for a player hero to return home from any location other than the most remote. So it is a way that you mark passage. Every three fellowships, approximately, is Yule. It's a year. It's been a year. And so I find that as an interesting way to mark time for the characters and to mark time for your game. But also the fact that no matter what's going on in the world, well, we all just kind of take Christmas off.
Yeah.
Right?
That is great to think about.
It is. I find it absolutely hilarious and awesome. We have rambled on, friends. I don't know. Does this interest any of you? What are you guys thinking of the rambling that we have done about the One Ring?
It's just
does it seem
cool.
Does it seem cool to y'all? Rachel's gonna have to tell me. I can't see the chat. So like, does it seem cool to y'all? Does it seem interesting? Right? I mean, I don't know. I think it's fascinating. I find it.
It's so cool to me.
It's cool.
I love it.
I want to play a game in it so bad. So bad.
Bobakin said, quote, "Lord, I was born a rambling man," end quote, "it's fine by me."
Nice. I appreciate that.
But yeah, if it interests you, it's here.
It is here.
And it's really cool, and I do recommend checking it out. I, for one, would love to run it at some point. It's really neat.
I will again stress this, though, right? If you're like, well, I'd rather stick with 5e or something that I know, understand that 5e, the 5e version, right, the Middle-earth Adventures, right, is a vastly different game than what we're talking about and what we're doing, right? The 5e Adventures is very much, it's D&D with a
setting of
a setting of Middle Earth, whereas this is what would definitely be described as the truest way to experience Middle Earth as a TTRPGer. That's not really just a formulated opinion. That is quite literally what the folks who have developed the game and developed the system and whatnot have stated themselves. They weren't joking when they say that this is a love letter to Middle Earth. And
I feel like it's clear to me that there is so much love that has been put into this.
And here's the thing, friends. Here's the thing, right? Okay. I have read The Hobbit. I have read The Lord of the Rings. I have finished about half of maybe the Silmarillion. Listen, anybody who completes the Silmarillion, deserves a medal, because that is a lot of dry reading. And I've read some of the Lost Tales, right? But the cool thing is you don't need to be an expert on Tolkien and all of that stuff to play the One Ring. You don't, right? You've seen the movies? Great. Good enough. You don't need to do anything more than that. The great part about it is they have been steadily releasing books that have come out and adventure modules through drive-through, some physical, some only digital, right, that have been expounding, and the library now for the One Ring is quite large. Now,
immense.
one thing that I really want to bring and mention before I'm going to put this over here. Before we go, this is one thing that you're like, but I don't have anybody to play with, right? Strider mode. This is how I've been able to experience the game. These are the rules and setting material necessary for you to play by yourself. Now, it gives you some recommendations on what you should play and how you should play it. And it does have some fine-tuning to character creation and things along those lines, right? But if you find yourself, like me, who doesn't have a group that's really interested in necessarily playing the One Ring, either it be they've got too many other games going on, they don't want to learn a new system, or what have you, or they're just not as big of a Tolkien nut as yourself is, right? Strider mode is for you. It is built in such a way to where you're not Strider himself, but it's set up to where you're kind of one of the Rangers of the North. And you are exploring around by yourself. You're doing things by yourself. It explains how you have fellowship on your own. Things along those lines. There is a massive amount that you can play around with this, and take any of the other modules for One Ring and apply Strider mode to it, and you can still do it. So that is, in my opinion, a major selling point for One Ring, is that it does allow you to be a lone hero if you cannot find a fellowship of your own. Yeah, that's all that I got.
The fellowship was within us the whole time.
Friendship is magic. Yay.
Thank you guys for sticking with us and through the technical difficulties.
Yes.
And just being great as always.
Yes,
this
friends.
Community truly astounds me every time I am a part of it. You guys are great.
Yes.
And I'm very thankful. I don't believe that there is any Fall of Red Dawn this Sunday.
No, there is not, because it is Christmas Eve.
Yes, but the next stream will be Tuesday on the 26th for Greyhawk Next Generation.
Yes,
Session 2.
If everything goes according to plan, next Tuesday we will have Greyhawk, the Next Generation, Part D. And we will be continuing on that particular tale. And we hope that we will see you all there. And hopefully by then, all the bugs will definitely be worked out. I went like, not to make it sound like this or whatnot, but I've seen John's like setup. He has like a mini server that sits underneath his table that ran everything. I just got my little old computer that's trying to push out all this stuff. So I'm doing my best. He's like the little engine that could. He's trying his hardest. So thanks again, folks, for bearing with us in the technical difficulties. Jay is up, and I believe we are going to raid into Lord Gazumba, where they're talking about the undead.
We're going quickly.
Yep. So stick around,
guys.
friends. Thank you so much. We will see you all here next Tuesday. Have a good weekend. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. And I think we're out. Almost.
I think so. Yeah. There we go. I think I started